We are focusing on mental health today, the addiction crisis. And today I'm joined by Carver Brown, an interventionist specialist, and Denise Marsters, founder and CEO of the McCoy House for Sober Living. And we thank both of you for being here.
It's good to be here.
Recovery and getting people to buy into it and realize what it can do for them. How difficult is it?
You want to start?
Well, they have to want to change, and that's the biggest thing. If there are incidents in their lives that have caused them humongous pain, humongous consequences, and they want to live a better life, but they have to want it from themselves. They can't want it for the families, they can't want it for their children. I think you have to go to the deepest depths to be able to want to get help.
And they got to have hope. Right, and so we try to, personalize the recovery process. I'm a man in long-term recovery from the disease of addiction.
And you can talk to them about what it was like and where you are now.
Absolutely, and I can talk about the hope, the despondency of being in early recovery and being in active addiction, and the hope that comes, and the blessings that come from a life in recovery.
And at first they must just listen to you. Do they really believe it, or what else do you use besides just talking to them?
Well, I can be very persuasive.
Okay.
And so we talk from the heart. There's this thing called the language of the heart. And so I just talk to them about my story and about what I've observed and identify with them, because addiction is about isolation. And so the people that we see are completely alone and isolated in the despondency of what's troubling them. And so we try to get to the heart of what their trouble is. Usually it's trauma. And then we try to give them a vision. If you're going to go on a journey, you want to have a North Star to guide by. We try to give them that North Star.
That is very interesting how you do that. What about the kind of people that you see from all walks of life, Denise?
We do. We see, originally we used to have just what I call vanilla alcoholics. We don't see that anymore. We see a whole different array of addictions, from everything from alcohol to drugs to process addictions, which are gambling, sex addiction, love addiction, relationship addiction, spending addiction, exercise addiction, the whole gamut. And when you asked about how do you buy into it, it took me a long time. I'm also in recovery, like Carver, and it took me 7 years from the time I knew I had a problem to the time that the problem got bad enough for me to want help. My family wanted help.
Wanted you to have that help,
but
right.
I didn't see it. I kept thinking things will get better, I can do it a different way, but I couldn't. I think it has to go to almost the depths of suicide ideations in order for people to get well. And that's really sad.
And the age group that you see, I'm sure it ranges, but you're seeing more and more young people.
Yeah, younger and younger and sicker. It's really sad what's going on with the demographic. But in addition to what Denise mentioned, internet addiction, gaming addiction, that cell phone that you can't seem to put down.
The cell phone, I think, is
gaming,
just,
all of these things, and the interesting thing is they all interact with one another. So addictions speak to one another, and you can get free from alcohol and then find yourself in workaholism. You can find yourself slipping into gambling addiction. You can find it's amazing. It's almost like the whack-a-mole. You can put your
one and another one comes out.
Exactly.
Well, they might be because of a predisposition to addiction.
Well, it's complicated.
Okay.
I mean, it can be that. I mean, we know that the latest research is about that there is genetics, but it's also family origin. It's also environment. You can't just say there's any one thing that causes addiction. Addiction is a brain disease. And unlike brain cancer, you can't catch it early, find that spot in the brain, do surgery and remove it. Because addiction, the latest research indicates that it's in every cell in the entire brain. So it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. What about with drugs? What are you seeing with drugs? Are you seeing the painkillers being used?
Mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. The opioid crisis is a crisis. And it's
a crisis here as well as everywhere, but you see it here.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I think on talking about that, we have a society right now that we have told that you don't have to have pain. And pain makes us grow. But when you have a pill for everything, that's what we introduce. I mean, any home has got a cabinet with drugs in it. We call them drugs. Some people call them medicine, but we call them drugs in our. And what Carver was saying about the guacamole, with the women that come to our house, the McCoy House for Sober Living, they're free from any kind of chemicals when they come to us. But the brain says, oh my God, what has she done? She stopped using what she used to use. Now I'm going to do a Google search and see what's going to mimic that addiction. What's going to mimic what I just stopped? And they will get into relationships, they will get into spending, over exercising, eating disorders. So that's why sober living is so important, because we see that once they leave treatment, which you don't see it in treatment.
No, and I think that's what I was referring to, that people that have one addiction and get over that, they're going to find themselves going to find something else to fill that empty
escape.
spot.
Yeah, and to heal the pain.
Escape from pain.
Right. But the reality is there is a solution. There is recovery, and there is permanent, contented recovery. And so it's about identifying the pain. And I love that you had Costas Mathos here. So places like A Bridge to Recovery, treatment centers, individual therapies, they've got, the only way out is to go through. And they're terrified.
Of course, because they revisit that trauma that caused it that started the whole thing, I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Costas said, there's always trauma
That's right.
of some kind. It could have happened at any time, but your mind goes back to that, and they're trying to not do
but
that.
we can guide them into facilities and to individuals where they can get the help they need, where they can have the courage to go and face that pain, where they can see that recovery is a reality, and there is such a thing as living a life free of these addictive practices.
Well, you both are, shining examples of that. What about paying for treatment? What about what about going through the insurance and things like that? People might say, I can't, how am I going to be able to pay for that or whatever? Do you find it difficult to maneuver through?
It's difficult, but there are low-cost solutions.
Okay.
And so, the Salvation Army is one that comes to mind, and there's others. There's many faith-based residential treatment programs. I'm thinking
they're out there.
Yeah. Friends
and they
of
work.
Alcoholics.
Yes.
Our Father's House of Freedom. There are those that will require nothing of you other than to just come there, be sober, get in community with us, pray with us, if that's what's the modality is, and then get better together. It's all about community. Addiction is about isolation, and recovery is about community, breaking out of that.
And the recovery community here is quite strong.
It's vibrant.
Amazing.
Yeah, for
that
such
good?
a relatively small town, I say we've got one of the strongest recovery communities per capita anywhere. If you want to recover, this is a great town to recover. You'll find people here that want to help you who are for nothing.
Right. That is very good. And the other addictions that you talked about, I think we think of drug and alcohol, but as you said, the gambling, sex addiction, all of those, all are treatable.
They are. They're all treatable. Eating disorders and the sex and love and relationship addiction I think they're the hardest to treat, because we're sexual beings and we all need relationships to survive, and we all need food. So there's that gray area. Like with me being a recovering alcoholic, I just put the cork in the bottle and I don't drink. But when you've got these other addictions, there's a real gray area. So it's about, how do we do it in a healthy way? How do we do it in a balanced way? Because it's all about living in a balanced way. You asked about the financial stuff.
Because that comes, people say, I'm not going to have the money to do that.
And people talk about that, but they have the money to buy drugs. And they have the money to buy stuff. But how invested are they in, selling your car to get well? How invested are they in selling their designer purse to get well? A lot of them are not. And it's the investment that you put into it that I believe that if people don't have an investment, a personal investment, that they're not going to be invested in getting well.
So that's part of the successful recovery, is to truly want it and be invested in finding it.
It's true. It's kind of like, if you had cancer, would you know, wouldn't you do whatever it took to go get treated? Would you not try to go to the best place you can? Would you not invest everything you had? Would your family not rally around you to help? Well, it's a disease just like that.
Speaking of families, do you feel like the family is important to the person recovering? And do you feel like sometimes the family has had enough? They just, you know, they've been through a lot with this person.
Yeah, the family's been traumatized.
Right.
I mean, the family is in pain. They're
That's
afraid.
what Costa said. They're totally.
It's a family disease.
Yeah.
It is a family disease. And so what we try to do is try to rally the family around the client, the person of concern. So it's not enough, you know, addiction is going to pull the family apart, and recovery is going to make whole again. It's not just enough for the one person to get sober or get into recovery. It's about bringing the family together. So we try to use processes like structured family recovery to meet with the family and the person of concern each week, and to let everybody take a tact in recovery. Let everybody, because there's family recovery too, just as if there's addiction recovery.
And that also spells success generally, if everybody's involved.
Yeah,
in it.
look at the models, like look at the percentages. So we know that treatment centers today are running somewhere around a 22 to 30% of the discharged clients stay sober the first year without a slip. Now that's shockingly low, but at the same time, there's other programs that physicians, attorneys, doctors, airline pilots, these kind of programs yield 85 to 90% recovery rates for 5 years without a slip. And what that is a team approach to recovery. They have case managers and sponsors and mentors. So why can't we do that with the family?
Sure. Sounds like that's the key.
That's the key.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us.
Thank you.